Sometimes, life changes in ways we never expect. One day you think you've got it all under control, your job, your home, your kids, and then, in the blink of an eye, everything starts to fall apart. That was the story of Emma Carter, a 32-year-old single mom living in a quiet town just outside of Pittsburgh. She worked long shifts as a nurse's aide, helping others heal, but she never imagined she'd soon be the one in need of saving. Emma wasn't rich, but she made ends meet. Her mornings began before sunrise, rushing to make breakfast for her kids, Lily, age 10, and Ethan, only 6. The sound of cartoons mixed with the smell of pancakes filled their small 2-bedroom apartment. And even though life wasn't perfect, it was theirs, cozy, loud, and full of love. But on one rainy afternoon, while Emma was charting patient records, her supervisor called her into the office. The hospital had been struggling financially. Budget cuts, layoffs, restructuring. Words she didn't fully process until she heard her name on the list. Emma was stunned. "You can't be serious," she whispered. Her supervisor avoided eye contact, sliding an envelope across the desk. "I'm sorry, Emma. It's out of my hands." She walked out of that hospital in shock, holding the envelope that carried her future, or what was left of it. Days turned into weeks. Resume after resume, rejection after rejection. She tried everything: grocery stores, diners, even cleaning jobs. But no one was hiring. The bills didn't stop just because life got harder. Rent notices piled up like snow on her doorstep. The electricity bill, the car payment, the groceries that kept shrinking each week. She smiled through it all, hiding the truth from her kids. "Mommy, when are we going to see a movie again?" Ethan would ask. She'd smile softly and say, "Soon, sweetheart. Maybe next weekend." But there was no next weekend. Only overdue letters and mounting fear. Then, one cold night, a knock on the door shattered what little peace she had left. It was her landlord, an older man with kind eyes but firm hands. "Emma, I'm sorry," he said, handing her a paper. "I've given you as much time as I could. You've got a week." A week. Just 7 days to find a new home, when she could barely afford groceries. That night, after putting Lily and Ethan to bed, Emma sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes and unpaid bills. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the room. She looked at her children sleeping peacefully on the couch, unaware that soon they'd have nowhere to go. Tears rolled down her face. She whispered to herself, "I promised I'd keep them safe. How do I keep that promise now?" The camera lingers on Emma's trembling hands clutching a family photo, her, Lily, and Ethan smiling under the summer sun. Sometimes, life doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just breaks. And in that moment, you either give up, or you fight. But little did Emma know, her fight was just beginning. Because when the world pushes you to your knees, sometimes that's when you learn how to rise. When the walls closed in and the nights grew colder, Emma would discover what it truly means to survive, and just how far a mother's love can stretch before it breaks. When the sun rose a week later, Emma's world looked nothing like it used to. The apartment they once called home was empty, every echo a reminder of what they'd lost. With 2 small bags and her kids by her side, Emma stepped into a world she had only ever read about: homelessness. They found temporary refuge at a women's shelter on the city's outskirts. It was small, crowded, and smelled faintly of disinfectant and worn blankets. The beds were narrow, the lights too bright, and privacy was a luxury. Lily looked around nervously. "Mom, are we going to stay here for long?" Emma knelt to meet her eyes, forcing a smile. "Just for a little while, honey. Like a sleepover. Remember how you love sleepovers." But deep down, she knew this wasn't a sleepover. This was survival. Every morning, she'd wake up before dawn, slipping quietly out of the shelter while her kids slept. She took any job she could find, cleaning motel rooms, washing dishes in diners, sweeping store floors after closing. Her hands were blistered, her back ached, and sometimes she'd fall asleep sitting upright, head resting on a folded jacket. Still, she never complained. Because every dollar she earned meant one more meal, one more day together. But the world can be cruel to those who are already on the edge. Rain would pour as she waited in food pantry lines for hours. Some days, she'd come back empty-handed, only able to hand her children packets of crackers and whisper, "We'll have something better tomorrow." Lily tried to be strong. She started helping Ethan with his homework, reading stories by the faint light of a shared lamp. But the constant moving from one shelter to another made it hard for her to keep up in school. Her grades began to slip, and her teachers started asking questions Emma wasn't ready to answer. Then one evening, as Emma came home from work, she found Ethan shivering under a blanket, his forehead burning hot. He had caught a cold that quickly turned into something worse. She rushed to the pharmacy, counting crumpled bills in her pocket. It wasn't enough. The pharmacist shook his head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We can't give this out without full payment." Emma's voice trembled. "Please, he's just 6. I'll come back with the rest, I promise." But rules were rules. She walked out into the cold night, holding Ethan's small hand, her heart breaking with every step. That night, as she sat beside him in the shelter's narrow bed, she whispered, "I'll figure something out, baby. Mommy always does." And she did. The next morning, she took an extra cleaning job, 2 shifts back to back, and bought the medicine. She didn't sleep for 2 days, but Ethan recovered. For a moment, it felt like hope was peeking through the clouds again. But life wasn't done testing her yet. A week later, a woman from social services visited the shelter. She spoke gently, but her words hit Emma like a hammer. "Miss Carter," she said, "we're concerned about your living conditions and the children's well-being. If things don't improve soon, we might have to step in." Emma froze. Step in. She knew exactly what that meant. Her heart raced. "Please," she begged. "They're all I have. I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can." The woman sighed. "I can see that. But sometimes, love alone isn't enough." When she left, Emma broke down. The fear of losing her kids, the only reason she'd kept going, tore through her like a storm. That night, she knelt in the shelter's tiny bathroom, scrubbing her kids' clothes by hand in a cracked sink. Tears fell into the water as she whispered to herself, "We'll make it, somehow. We have to." Because in that moment, Emma made herself a promise. No matter what it took, no matter how far she had to fall, she would not lose her children. But the question lingered, how? When every door was closing, how do you find a way out? Sometimes, the help we need arrives in the most unexpected ways. And for Emma, that help would come from a stranger, someone who would see in her what she'd forgotten to see in herself. When one act of kindness opens a new door, Emma will face her biggest decision yet, and discover that even the smallest glimmer of hope can change everything. Sometimes, when life has taken everything from you, it gives something back in the smallest, most unexpected way. Winter had arrived. The city was blanketed in snow, the streets alive with people carrying shopping bags and bright lights hanging from every lamppost. It was the holiday season, a time for joy and warmth, but for Emma, it only made the cold feel sharper. She still worked cleaning jobs, still came home exhausted. But this winter, she found one small blessing, the community center down the street. It offered free meals, clothes, and a place for kids to play safely after school. That's where she met Mrs. Walker. Mrs. Walker was in her late 60s, a retired teacher with soft gray hair and kind, tired eyes. She volunteered at the center every week, serving hot soup to families like Emma's. The first time she met Emma, she noticed the exhaustion behind her smile. "You've got that look," Mrs. Walker said kindly. "The one all good mothers have, the one that says, 'I'll break before I let them go hungry.'" Emma smiled shyly, brushing off a tear. "It's been a rough few months." "Well," Mrs. Walker said, handing her a warm bowl of soup, "you don't have to go through it alone." That was the beginning of something new. Mrs. Walker started talking to Emma more, asking about her background, her old job at the hospital, her kids, her dreams. It had been so long since anyone had asked about her dreams. One snowy afternoon, Mrs. Walker mentioned something that made Emma's heart skip a beat. "You know," she said, stirring a pot of stew, "I volunteer at a clinic part-time. They're looking for help. Nothing big, just assisting nurses. You've got experience. Maybe I could put in a word." Emma's eyes widened. "Really? You do that for me?" Mrs. Walker smiled. You've already done the hard part, sweetheart. You kept going. Sometimes that's all it takes. That night, Emma lay awake in her bunk bed at the shelter, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in months, she felt something stirring inside her. Hope. It was fragile like a candle in the wind, but it was there. A week later, she got the call, an interview at the local hospital. She didn't have professional clothes anymore. Everything she owned was either worn or too casual. But when she told Mrs. Walker, the older woman simply smiled and opened her trunk. Inside were two neatly folded dresses. "They were my daughter's," she said softly. She would have wanted someone strong to wear them. Emma's voice broke. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just pay it forward," Mrs. Walker replied. The morning of the interview, Emma's hands trembled as she fixed her hair in the shelter's tiny mirror. Lily handed her a small paper heart she'd cut out from an old coloring book. It said in shaky handwriting, "Good luck, Mommy. You're the best nurse in the world." She tucked it in her purse, a reminder of why she couldn't give up now. At the hospital, she sat across from two interviewers. Her resume was thin. Her voice cracked a few times. But her sincerity shone through every word. "I know I don't have much right now," she said, "but I'm willing to start from the bottom. I just want to make a life for my kids again." The hiring manager looked at her, tired, but determined, and something in his expression softened. Still, when the call didn't come for days, Emma feared the worst. Until, one frosty afternoon, her phone buzzed. "Ms. Carter? This is the hospital. We'd like to offer you a part-time position, starting Monday." She froze. Then she cried, not loud sobs, just quiet tears of relief. The kind that come when you've been holding your breath for too long. That night, she ran into Mrs. Walker's arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "I got it," she said through tears. "I got the job." Mrs. Walker smiled proudly. "See, dear? You just needed someone to remind you who you are." The next morning, Emma walked out of the shelter with her children, bundled up in their coats. The air was cold, but her heart was warm. Snowflakes fell softly on her hair as she whispered to herself, "This is the start of something new." For the first time in a long time, she felt like maybe, just maybe, life was turning around. But Emma was about to learn that even hope comes with its own challenges. Because when you finally start to rise, life has a way of testing just how strong your wings really are. When Emma begins to rebuild her life, unexpected blessings and new trials will shape the woman she's destined to become. Her fight isn't over, but her light is finally breaking through. There's something about spring that makes everything feel possible again. Maybe it's the sunlight after months of gray skies. Or maybe it's just the reminder that even the coldest seasons eventually end. For Emma Carter, this spring wasn't just a new season, it was a new beginning. The hospital job had changed everything. It wasn't glamorous, the hours were long, the pay small, but it was hers. The second chance. A reason to get up every morning with purpose again. Every day, she'd clock in early and stay late, doing everything from cleaning rooms to comforting patients who had no family. She worked quietly, humbly, but everyone noticed. Her compassion lit up every ward she walked through. At home, or what now was home, life was slowly blooming again. After months of saving every penny, Emma found a small two-bedroom apartment near the park. It wasn't much, the walls were thin, the furniture secondhand, but to Lily and Ethan, it felt like a palace. They ran from room to room that first night, laughing. Ethan threw himself onto his bed, a real bed, shouting, "It's so soft, Mommy." And for the first time in what felt like forever, Emma laughed until her stomach hurt. Every evening, they'd gather around a small table for dinner, sometimes pasta, sometimes soup, but always together. The sound of their laughter filled the tiny apartment, replacing the silence that once haunted her. And she never forgot the people who helped her get there. Mrs. Walker visited often, bringing home-baked cookies and staying for tea. She had become more than a friend. She was family now. "Look at you," Mrs. Walker smiled one afternoon, watching Emma cook while the kids did homework. "I told you, dear. You just needed a little faith." Emma nodded softly. I just needed someone to believe in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Months passed, and her dedication at work didn't go unnoticed. Her supervisor pulled her aside one day and said, "Emma, we'd like to offer you a full-time position. You've more than earned it." Emma was speechless. She blinked back tears. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to us." But the truth was, we did. It meant everything. She could finally afford stability, a better school for the kids, a few simple joys she'd long put aside, like buying Lily her favorite pink backpack or surprising Ethan with a baseball glove. And through it all, Emma never stopped giving back. She started volunteering at the same community center where she once stood in line for food. Now, she was the one handing out warm meals, smiling at weary mothers the way Mrs. Walker once smiled at her. Sometimes she'd see women come through the doors, tired, scared, holding children close, and she'd think that was me not so long ago. And when they'd ask, "How did you do it? How did you get out?" Emma would smile softly and say, "By not giving up, even when it felt like the world had." One sunny afternoon, Emma came home to find Lily sitting at the kitchen table, working on a school essay. "Mom, can you read this?" she asked shyly. Emma sat beside her and read aloud, "The person I admire most is my mom. She never gave up even when we lost everything. She's my hero." Emma froze. Her eyes filled with tears, her hand covering her mouth. "Lily," she whispered, "I don't even know what to say." Lily smiled, hugging her tight. "You don't have to say anything, Mom. You already did enough." In that moment, surrounded by laughter, sunlight, and love, Emma realized something. She hadn't just rebuilt a home. She'd rebuilt a life. But what Emma didn't know was that her story was far from over. Because sometimes, life rewards those who keep believing, not with riches or fame, but with peace and purpose. Sometimes, the hardest battles don't happen in war zones. They happen in quiet apartments, in the hearts of mothers, who wake up every day, not knowing how they'll make it through, but they do anyway. It's been a year since Emma Carter's world fell apart. And today, it looks nothing like it did before. The once homeless single mom now wakes up before dawn, slipping quietly into her nurse's uniform, not because she has to, but because she wants to. She pours herself a cup of coffee, looks at her sleeping children, and whispers a prayer of gratitude. The apartment may still be small, but it's filled with laughter, warmth, and something she once thought she'd lost forever, peace. Every morning, she walks Lily and Ethan to school. Lily, now confident and happy again, waves from the school gate, shouting, "Love you, Mom." Ethan races her down the sidewalk, giggling. And for a moment, Emma just stops, watching them, smiling. She doesn't have a mansion. She doesn't drive a fancy car. But she has something far greater, the unshakable love of her children, and the strength she built from every storm she survived. Later, as she heads to work, Emma passes by the community center, the same place that once gave her food and hope. Now, she's on the other side of the table, serving others. A young mother walks in, tired, holding a toddler, eyes red from crying. Emma sees herself in her instantly. She walks over, offers a warm bowl of soup and gently says, "It's going to be okay. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but it will be." The woman looks up at her, surprised by the confidence in her voice. "How do you know?" she whispers. Emma smiles. "Because I've been where you are." That night, Emma tucks her kids into bed. The glow of a small lamp fills the room. She sits beside them, stroking Ethan's hair as he drifts to sleep. Lily asks quietly, "Mom, are we happy now?" Emma looks around, at the cracked walls, the faint hum of the heater, the family photo on the nightstand. She smiles softly. "Yeah, baby. We are." She steps out onto the small balcony, the city lights glittering below. The wind is cool against her face. For the first time in a long time, she allows herself to just breathe. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And sometimes, that's enough to start again. I used to think strength meant never falling apart. But now I know, it's having the courage to keep standing even after you've been broken. Because in the end, life will test you, break you, and strip you bare. But love, especially a mother's love, can rebuild what life tries to tear apart. Emma closes her eyes, whispering to herself, "I made it. We made it." To every mother out there fighting a silent battle, remember this: you are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and loved more than you know. A mother's love is the strongest force in the world. It can rebuild what life tries to tear apart. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Somewhere out there, a mother like Emma is still fighting, just trying to hold her family together. Your simple act of sharing this video could remind her that she's not alone. Like this video if you believe in the power of love and resilience. Comment below what part of Emma's journey moved you the most. We read every story you share. Subscribe for more true-to-life stories that heal, inspire, and remind us that hope always finds a way back. And remember, we're not just telling stories. We're changing lives.